snapshot from the summer of 2021. Porch beers, 8 p.m., bring snacks. So the text message read on a humid summer evening. It's the same text I often sent to the group chat. Friends arrived organically and the porch filled quickly. The window, that we often use as a door, also known as the wind door, was wide open for friends to hop in and out of whenever they needed water, a pint glass, or the bathroom. Between two ferns, under twinkling lights, we shared memories, song requests, jokes, and of course those snacks. I can remember trying to capture everything about the evening in my memory, taking mental pictures of the genuine smiles across people's faces, the kind you feel deep in your soul. We were young, loud, energetic, and boisterous. We were seen, known, heard, and above all, loved. As the night was winding down, the music volume lowered, and more intimate conversations began about the girl a friend was in love with, and about another friend's fears of buying a house and moving back to North Carolina. I started to share about my feelings of inadequacy at work and worry about other areas of my life where I didn't feel enough. I could feel my chest tighten and fear creep in. My breath quickened, tears were running down my face. I couldn't think straight. Now I know I was experiencing my first panic attack. The few friends that were left on the porch wrapped me up and grounded me. I felt safe and I wasn't alone. People who knew me could embrace me when I was the life of the party a few hours ago and when I was falling apart right then and there. That night confirmed my suspicions that the front porch of my apartment was a special place. The fact that both a crippling panic attack and a perfect summer evening could exist simultaneously in one space fascinated me. Whenever I ran into an old tenant or any of their friends, I'd ask them about their time on the porch and the memories that they'd made there. And what I came to find out was that to a small pocket of the Buffalo community, this front porch was a sacred space. What is sacred space? Is it about the feelings evoked through the design space? Or is it about the ceremonies and rituals that take place there? Are all sacred spaces deemed sacred by God or the church, or by the people who fill it and create a community there? A younger, more optimistic version of myself sat in an architecture theory course at the University of Buffalo, discussing the importance of sacred space in architecture. The question of the day was whether or not the addition of a Starbucks cafe to the iconic mosque in Istanbul, known as the Hagia Sophia, would take away from the mosque's sacredness. Oof. That's a big question. We're talking about an architectural landmark that has continued to be built and rebuilt and burned down and re-erected since 300 AD. It has housed a multitude of religions, political forces, uprisings, denominations, and now a hypothetical Starbucks in a theory course in Buffalo, New York. Could a space actually lose its sacredness? Could God revoke the set apart by me stamp from a typical sacred space? Where would people congregate if the space was no longer sacred? I knew the point of the class was to look at the question through an architectural lens, but clearly I was stuck on these theoretical and theological tangents. So what is sacred space? Some of you here may answer with churches, mosques, temples, synagogues, and other houses of worship. But what if it's right outside your front door? What if it's the quiet corner of a coffee shop, or the wooded area behind your childhood home, or even the car that you can sit in with your best friend for hours, just parked there? By the end of this talk, I hope that you'll be able to identify a space that is sacred to you. In the US today, a third of the population identifies with no religious affiliation, according to the Pew Research Center. The study discusses how this growing population, compared to their religious counterparts, are less likely to be socially involved and civically engaged. It also means that fewer people are even occupying typical sacred spaces. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg coined the term known as the third place. It's a place outside of work and home where people gather to socialize. They are vital to community and development. Oldenburg argues that the need to congregate is a basic human instinct, and that the third place only needs one thing to thrive: participation. So with the increase in social isolation, the decrease in religious affiliation, and the so-called death of the third place, we could use more connection and more sacred spaces in our lives. So what if we redefined what made space sacred and encourage one another to seek out a meaningful third place in each other's lives? I'd like to attempt to do this by telling you about feelings of transcendence within a single place, and encounters that felt divine in that location, and personal memories of feeling connected to God there, by continuing to tell you about that Buffalo porch in Elmwood Village. The apartment that I currently live in is attached to this porch, and has been passed down through word of mouth, and in turn connected over a decade's worth of tenants and friends. To onlookers from the sidewalk, it is an old wooden porch, falling down little by little each year, with some twinkling lights and 2 ferns in dire need of some TLC. But to those who have occupied it, it has been a space of sadness and joy, doubt and faith, and held moments of both despair and hope. What if it was the symbolism with the memories held in that location and the new moments that you're creating there that felt like a divine encounter? A divine encounter is a surprise collision or unplanned meeting with God. In July of 2021, I met the mailman while sitting on the porch. A large yellow envelope was passed to me, filled with photocopies of poems that my grandmother had written throughout her life. We'd recently bonded over an enjoyment of writing poetry, and now I was reading her life's work in my favorite place. One poem that struck my attention was called Death with Jesus, written in 1990. The opening stanza read, "So death you've come to claim me, yet now I face thee unafraid. As I embrace my final ending, I'm not angry or dismayed." It captivated me that my very alive grandmother had written so vividly about her death 31 years earlier. I should have picked up the phone right then and there to call her and discuss it further, but I didn't. Another week went by and July 31st came around, which was the fun summer evening with my friends that ended in my first panic attack. The part that I left out of that story earlier is that my brother called me the following morning to let me know that my grandmother had passed away the night before around 11 p.m. All I could think about was the closing remarks of that very same poem I read on the porch a week earlier. So as my Lord and I make my last journey, my soul to him I humbly release. From the Spirit I will reap life in eternity, denying death to find everlasting peace. The porch has witnessed deep grief beyond my own over the years. Similarly to typical sacred spaces, the porch has been a place where people are called to rejoice with those who rejoice, to mourn with those who mourn, and to live in harmony with one another. An old tenant, Jen, experienced her own grief on the porch 10 years earlier. When we first met, Jen and I shared a few porch beers, and she told me stories about when she lived in the apartment. One was about a love that happened in her life that was leading up to a big birthday gift, a tandem kayak, for the 2 of them to take out together on Lake Erie. But sadly, that relationship ended before she could give him the gift. So there it hung in the basement as a reminder of heartbreak and unmet expectations. Jen moved out and moved on, and the kayak just hung there. Summers would come and go, and no one ever took the kayak out on the lake. It became a backdrop as I did laundry and was a head-hitting hazard as I set up mousetraps down there. But now I knew its origin story. A few weeks later, Jen pulled up with 2 friends following in the car behind. She led them straight to the basement, and they emerged carrying out the kayak together. I just watched through the balusters, feeling as though I was witnessing the closing of a chapter that I didn't even know existed before mine and Jen's unplanned meeting. I think that life throws these surprise collisions at us, and sometimes the only thing we are called to do is listen. What if it was the people and connections happening within a single space that gave you a feeling of transcendence? Transcendence is a word used to describe the condition of moving beyond your physical needs, limitations, and realities. A reality of being single in your mid-20s is being on dating apps. It's not every day that you feel open and comfortable to let people peer into your Hinge and Bumble universe. And if that door does get opened, it doesn't last very long. Insecurities creep back in, phones get locked, and limitations become strict again. But an evening that went beyond these preconceived realities is what we have now deemed swipe night. My friend Kristen and I had the idea to gather some ladies together on the porch, to swipe on the apps for one another, to give a new perspective on people that maybe we'd passed on before. And the night started exactly like that, with 8 ladies on the porch passing their phones around in a circle. Questions arose like, do you have a type? Or what are you looking for in a partner? And matches were made. Initial messages were sent. And somewhere in the middle of the evening, Kristen asked for advice on her personal profile. It was a vulnerable request, and the group answered honestly, encouraging her to take more updated photos and answer prompts that highlight her great sense of humor. It started a cheerleading session and a trend of the other ladies bringing up their personal profiles, asking each other for advice. We were able to find qualities within each other that we often don't see within ourselves. A night that started as a joke in most of our minds ended up being an evening of vulnerability, where the porch hosted a group therapy session and a mini photo shoot, and allowed us to go beyond our preconceived realities of our very siloed dating app lives to now being able to do it together within a community. What if it was the weaving invisible string from the past to the present to the future within a single space that made you feel like you were connected to something bigger and greater than yourself? Author Tao Tai asked in her essay, The Ghosts in My Home, is it possible for anger or love or heartbreak to stay embedded in a house long after its residents have gone? If we can stain walls with crayons and marinara sauce, can the soul of a home be marked by those who came before? And my answer to her question would be yes. The love and joy that Jeff and Melissa experienced in their first home together is still tangible in the ways in which my friends care for and love each other deeply on the porch. Jeff and Melissa reconnected at a dinner party hosted on the porch through the mutual invite of a friend. This was the start of an epic love story. Casual group porch hangouts became intimate date nights. The porch helped set a foundation for their love and life together. They wrote that from 2008 to 2017, it was a place for friends, for family, for countless gatherings and dinners, for first kisses, engagements, first steps, real joys, deep sorrows, and endless memories. Jeff and Melissa had a difficult decision to make upon the arrival of their second son. It was time for them to move somewhere new. As a moving out gift, Jeff created a book titled with the address of the home. On the cover was a picture of the porch, with Melissa standing on one of their chairs, watering their hanging plants. Honestly, at first glance of the cover of this book, I couldn't tell if it was a photo taken this past summer when I lived there, or a summer 10 years ago. The mismatched furniture, the youthful energy, the twinkling lights, the hanging plants, all of that is still true right now if you walked by the house. How do you capture a place and feeling so incredible and turn it into a tangible object? Jeff did it with a book that he and Melissa can look back on fondly with their kiddos and grandkids to show where their love and life started and how much emotion was embedded within that place. And I've attempted to do this with videos during torrential rainstorms, with hundreds of photos of friends gathering, with terrible, I mean terrible haikus that I will not be sharing tonight. Not sharing tonight. With doodles and sketches, and even with this TEDx talk. And all of those mediums have come up short of expressing the emotions and feelings that I have about that porch being a sacred space. But isn't that the mystery of faith? To believe in something so wholeheartedly that you know is true and yet cannot fully prove. Somehow, we are connected and transported through the multitude of emotions and souls that have existed in that very same spot. I have learned that it is not the fluffiness of the cushions or the fullness of the ferns or even the perfect summer porch vibes playlist that make that space sacred. It's the people. It has always been the people and the connections that are existing on the porch that make it a sacred space. I'd like to challenge you all here tonight to look for and make room for intimate sacred spaces in your lives. The environment that you create has the ability for the people and connections that are happening in that place to significantly outweigh the events and activities that are going on. Yes, in the porch's history, there are these big moments that hold weight and the lore of past communities that have inhabited it. But in mine and my roommate Hannah's memories, there are also these very small, mundane tasks and rituals that have built upon each other to set a foundation for deep friendships. If the porch has taught me anything, it's that you do not need worshiping icons or theological decor or even walls for a space to feel sacred. But rather, you need a willingness to commit to consistency and participation with the people in your lives within that space. May you all find an intimate, sacred space in your life. May you share it with people that you love and invite new people into it. May you be encouraged to ask questions about those who have existed there before you and be curious about those people. May you have the discernment to know when to hold on to that space and moment in time and when to pass it on. May you be vulnerable, open, and honest within that environment, and may you all joyfully participate in your sacred space. Thank you.